Welcome to the first of a series of videos about how to pitch for investment for your early stage or startup company. My name is Frank Erschen and I'm here to talk to you about the artful science of pitching. I've combined 25 years of corporate experience with the last 10 years in the startup community to develop the artful science of pitching. I'm also a co-founder of a company called Power Noodle, and so I know firsthand what it's like to be raising money. These experiences have given me a holistic view of what it takes to attract investment. In addition, I have a deep understanding of the operational and mental challenges that founders go through when they're fundraising. Well, I've been able to take my framework out to quite a number of companies across North America, South America, I've even done some companies, and even India. I've probably seen a few thousand pitches in the last several years, and I've helped hundreds of companies refine their pitch working towards investment. I've helped everybody get from friends and family investment right up to Series C. So one of the things I'm asked about is, why do I call it artful science? Well, let me talk to you a little bit about what I mean by art versus science. Art is how and what you pitch. It's what we have to do to craft a pitch based on having imperfect information about our business. We may not have enough customers, we may have a product that is still in an MVP stage, we may not even have a product yet, or we don't have our pricing settled, we may not have a repeatable sales process, we certainly don't have as many customers as we'd like to have, and yet we're out there asking for money. Now, how do we contrast that to science? Science is how investors evaluate potential investments. I don't mean capital S science. What I mean by this is investors use techniques like investigating what you're doing, we also call it due diligence, and evaluating you against other opportunities that they have. They literally go through a process where they're checking things off in their head about what they like and don't like about your company or how you compare to another company. If you're in a pitch competition, one of the things that you do see is a score sheet in front of you that allows people, that you see people physically scoring a company. So here's a question. What's the objective of an investor pitch? I asked this of a lot of people. Years ago, I got answers like to get a check, to get investment. At the end of the day, what I say now that people are doing is to get to the next meeting. If your objective is to get a check, you're going to be disappointed far more often than you're going to be satisfied. Why? Because attracting, negotiating, and closing investment is a process, and it requires a pitch strategy. Now, the one thing I'll tell you is that if you're pitching in a competition, the objective is to win. It's a little bit different than if you're pitching outside of a competition. But in any case, you still want to get that next meeting. In this series of videos, I'm going to talk about 3 lists. The first one is 4 things that you need to think about every time you pitch, before you pitch. The second is the 13 topics that you need to include when you build your pitch for a particular event or for a particular investor. And then I'm going to close with 7 hints and tips. In this video, I'm going to cover the first list, the 4 things you need to think about for every single pitch. I'll cover the rest in the subsequent videos. So, what are those 4 things? Well, your pitch strategy is made up of a story, criteria, audience, and format. Let's start with audience. This is about understanding who you're pitching to. If you're pitching to a VC, you should be able to go to their website, find out what their investment strategy or investment thesis is, find out who is responsible for different companies in their portfolio, and you should be able to figure out exactly what they're looking for from an investment. If you're talking to angels, it's a little bit harder, but through LinkedIn and various other methods, you can still find it. Worst case, find out what people have invested in before and go talk to those companies. The second thing is to look at format. What I mean by format is 3 things. The first is timing. You need to understand and be very clear on how much time you have to pitch. You also need to know whether or not this is an opportunity to give an uninterrupted pitch, which means you get to tell a story, or it is an interactive pitch, which means you're going to be going to Q&A very, very quickly. The third thing about timing is there Q&A? If there's Q&A, then that means by definition, you have to be ready for 2 pitches at any event. There's the mainstream pitch that you have to give, and there's the preparation you have to do to be able to talk questions that are being asked of you. The agenda. Knowing where you are on the agenda is of course a good thing. Knowing who's before you, who's after you is good. If you know that you're after a break or before a break or after lunch, That will affect how dynamic you need to be for the presentation. If you know that you're following somebody who is an exceptional presenter, then that means you have to up your game and be your best for that presentation. Lastly, is a few things about the venue. The first is ask if there's a stage or a podium. The second is there a microphone or a lav mic available? If there's a podium, you'll have perhaps a microphone there. If you're a wanderer, then you need a lav mic, and you need to know in advance whether or not you can get that or you can request it. Lastly, is there a preview monitor? Preview monitor is important because that prevents you from turning around and looking at the screen at your presentation all the time. When you do that, it looks like you don't know your material. The last of the first three parts of the strategy is the criteria. The criteria is sometimes very formal. If you're in a pitch competition, there's usually a score sheet. If it's not a pitch competition, then you should do a little bit of probing to find out what it is that the audience is looking for from the investment opportunities. You might also want to find out, is one criterion weighted heavier than another, or what the decision process is to be able to get through that. So these three things lead us to the fourth part of the strategy, which is the story. What's the flow of the story? What's the context that we're trying to deliver? And what's the level of detail that we need to be able to include in the pitch? What you need to be able to ensure that you're doing is that the core message is the same regardless of the audience you're talking to, but your delivery may alter slightly depending on who you're talking to. You don't want conflicting information amongst your potential investors. Stay tuned for video number 2.